Thanks everyone for being here and welcome to the University of Arizona Museum of Art's Thursday at Home virtual art talk, Picturing 2020 with Autumn Eckman and Jonathan Marquis. My name is Chelsea Farrar and I am the Curator of Community Engagement for the U of A Museum of Art. And again, thank you all so much for being here tonight. Before we begin, I do want to acknowledge that the University of Arizona sits on the homelands of Indigenous peoples who have stewarded this land since time immemorial, including the Tohono O'odham and Pasquayaqui. And we recognize the 22 sovereign nations of what is now called Arizona. Aligning with the university's core value of a diverse and inclusive community, it is our responsibility to recognize and acknowledge the people, culture, and history that make up the Wildcat community. At the institutional level, we must be proactive in broadening awareness throughout campus and beyond to ensure our students feel represented and valued. In this virtual format, I know that many of the guests here today join us from across the United States, and I encourage you to learn what Indigenous lands you inhabit. And again, just a huge welcome to everyone, and thank you for spending time virtually with us here today. I would love to see, in fact, where folks are joining us from. So in the chat, if you want to comment what city or state or even what nation you're currently in and let us know where you're joining us from, that would be great. So before we get started, I do want to introduce one of our incredible staff members who is always critical to helping the museum offer these kinds of programs, especially in a year where we're moving virtual and we wouldn't be able to do it without her. Natasha Allen is the museum's coordinator for members and donors. Natasha, how are you doing tonight?
Chelsea, I'm doing great. Happy Thursday, everyone. As Chelsea mentioned, my name is Natasha and I am the membership coordinator at the museum, which means I have the incredible pleasure of thanking our members and talking a little bit about our membership program. As most of you know, we are now approaching being closed for an entire year. And thanks to the incredible generosity of our members and donors, we have been able to continue bringing you guys amazing content and events virtually, just like tonight. If you are a current member, thank you, thank you, thank you. But if you aren't a member and you have been considering it, I can't think of a better time to join. Membership starts at $50 and is a great way to advocate for the arts, build a sense of community, and support one of Tucson's greatest museums. For those interested, I will leave a link in the chat to sign up. And please keep in mind, we are extending all memberships right now equal to the time of closure so that you have a full year to access the museum and the exclusive content we have for members. Speaking of which, we have some pretty awesome events coming up. And if you're anything like me, right now is the time to pull out a pen and paper and write these dates down because we have some really exciting events coming up. So up first is our Spotlights on Provenance later this month on the 22nd at 3 p.m. And following that is our members only art talk on April 5th at noon, which will be presented by our docent, Linda Lee. And if you aren't a member, you have really been missing out this semester because we have had some fantastic talks. 3 days later, on April 8th, Art Trivia Happy Hour returns at 5 p.m. And we encourage you guys to come with your favorite beverage or snack and get ready to have some incredible fun and learn a lot. And then last, but definitely not least, our public workshop on April 22nd at 5 p.m. Seating is limited and participants will receive a free copy of Mark Minjavar's book. So I highly suggest that you sign up soon, if not at the end of today's talk. So I know that was a lot thrown at you really quickly, but as always, I'm available for any questions in the chat or via email. Thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Really appreciate that. And yeah, definitely, if you are interested in more programs, visit our website and that link that Natasha is going to leave for you there. One thing that I want to mention before we get started that's always really helpful because we have lots of folks joining us today, that if you, during our presentation, we'll be sharing some video, and one thing that's really helpful is to reduce that bandwidth on your end is to turn off your video. That will be really great and will probably help the quality of the video streaming on your end. During the Q&A, it will be great, a great time for everyone to turn back on their videos and we can see you, and you can offer up some questions in the chat at any point during the presentation, and we'll be saving time at the end for a Q&A with our artists today. We are streaming this live on Facebook, so if you are joining us from the Facebook world, definitely feel free to add some comments and questions to Facebook, and we'll be sure to try and answer those here as well. And this video is being recorded and will be available on YouTube later this semester. So let's go ahead and get started. Tonight's program, Picturing 2020 with Autumn Eckman and Jonathan Marquis, is part of our spring series of programs that's highlighting all the artists, or several of our key artists from the museum's online community exhibition, Picturing 2020, A Community Reflects. If you haven't seen this exhibition, I really encourage you to explore some of the online galleries. And I believe Will is going to leave a link to the exhibition on the online galleries in the chat. So we had over 100 artists from Pima County submit work last year to this community exhibition, and we were asking them to reflect on what the year 2020 has meant to them. And we are incredibly honored to have two of those artists joining us tonight to speak about their incredible collaboration, including Shapeless, as well as their original collaborative work called Drift. So joining us today is Autumn Eckman. Eckman received her MFA in choreography from the University of Iowa and also received her classical training from the Houston Ballet Academy. In her performance career, Autumn has had the privilege to dance with Giordano Dance Chicago, where she served as assistant artistic director. Her choreographic commissions include original work for Juntos Collective, State Street Ballet, Dance Work Chicago, Kit Modus, Big Muddy Dance Company, Williams Henry Dance Company, Missouri Contemporary Ballet, Washington and Lee University, Stevens College, Western Michigan University, Grand Valley State University, University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, and the University of Missouri, Kansas City. I refuse to even shorten that up because I think it's incredible and has to be said. Autumn also taught as an instructor of dance at Northern Illinois University from 2009 to 2015, and we are very lucky that she's currently an assistant professor of dance at the University of Arizona. Thank you so much for being here, Autumn. And secondly, also joining us is Jonathan Marquis. Jonathan Marquis is a multimedia artist, writer, and mountaineer seeking immersive experiences with mountainous terrain to consider post-human geographies. His investigations of the landscape began when he launched the Glacier Drawing Project in 2014, an endeavor to draw all the remaining glaciers in the state of Montana. He has since covered thousands of miles on foot in remote mountain ranges, translating his encounters through drawing, painting, cameraless photography, and video. Marquis received his Master's of Fine Arts in Art History from the University of Arizona and has exhibited works across the United States and abroad, including exhibitions at the Museum of Contemporary Art Tucson, the University of Arizona Museum of Art, Missoula Art Museum, Center for Visual Arts in Denver, Colorado, the University of Colorado Pueblo, and Fine Art Complex 1101 in Tempe, Arizona. He currently splits his time between Missoula, Montana, and Tucson, Arizona. And so welcome, Jonathan. Thank you both so much for being here and being part of the exhibition and being part of being here this evening to talk more about your work and your collaborative practices. And so with that, Jonathan, do you want to start off by talking a little bit about how this collaboration came to be?
Sure thing, absolutely. And thank you, Chelsea, for having us here. It's a real honor and pleasure to be with UAMA once again. This collaboration between Autumn and I began when I, with my graduate thesis work. I'm going to try and share some images with you all here, if I can get it to work. There we go. So this collaboration really began with some work I did with my graduate thesis work here at U of A. I tried to create a physical response to climate change. And I created this exhibition called The Geology of the Senses. One part of this exhibition was I was creating these videos of melting ice to convey this a sensory experience of these massive events like glacial melt or climate change. I made these videos by creating these layered ice blocks, and then they were layered with different colors of paint, gesso, charcoal, and other materials, sometimes like rocks. And then I would video record them from their melting from above. And you would get a sort of result, something like this. It would start to break apart and act like an ice sheet melting. And I shared that video with Autumn when we first met. And that's sort of what started our collaboration. Autumn, is there anything you want to add to that?
Absolutely. I just found the work to be so unique and compelling, and I felt that as a choreographer that my work could be an extension of that physicalized response. And so I used these visuals to create movement that was fragmented, breaking, flowing, melting. This sort of is a trio with a sort of a Mother Earth figure that is upheld by these two other figures, and just try to make something that felt very far away. This idea of glacial deterioration, something that felt very remote and removed from our immediate environment. It inspired me to try to create something that was tangible, something we can emotionally tap into.
So then Autumn approached me and invited me to stream this video behind her choreography. And then that's what became Drift. And I think we could probably stream Drift now, Chelsea, if you're ready. Autumn, it's so nice to see that again. I remember seeing it when we in the space, and just remembering how powerful it was to see it at that in the Stevie Eller at that scale. Hopefully, some of you out there maybe even had a chance to witness Drift as well.
Yeah, this is really nice to revisit, Jonathan. And I just wanted to also acknowledge this piece was created in 2019, and it premiered at the School of Dance at the Stevie Eller Theater. And the harpist that you see on stage was an integral part of this interdisciplinary collaboration. We were brought together by our chair of our department, Jory Hancock, brought Michelle Gott and myself together. And so the musical component was this sort of very unique collaboration between Jonathan, Michelle, and I. And I just had a really great memory of Jonathan, you studying the video, studying the movement, and he actually had to go back and he manipulated the film to sort of carry along with the energy and the wave of the movement. So that was really a really great memory to revisit.
That's great. Yeah, it's the original video was something like 30 minutes long. The original ablation site video is what I call them, 30 minutes long. So I had to trim it down for this sweet little 6-minute performance. And it was so fun to come and I attended some of the rehearsals and just to get a sense of Autumn's choreography, which I had been familiar with prior. I had seen some of it in a show just prior to that, and I really responded to her movement design, and it seemed like such a great person to collaborate with to bring the ablation site video to such a large screen, which as an artist, I love when things get as you saw, my paintings are very large, so it was so nice to see it that big and be able to be involved with the School of Dance, and also Dr. Michelle Gott, wonderful person and harpist.
Yes, and this will actually kind of lead into where our next collaboration went. But I mean, it's really serendipitous that today is the 1-year landmark. This piece, Drift, was scheduled to premiere as part of an evening performance in Reykjavik, Iceland, in Harpa Hall a year ago today. And it was about 11 o'clock at night. We got through our dress rehearsal and we got called back home to the States. Everything got shut down. The entire country got shut down. And we had worked for a year to get over there. And Dr. Gott had brought Heart Fusion, which she spearheads over at the Fred Fox School of Music. We were all there. And we came back home. And so about, I would say a month or two into it, I called Jonathan and I just said, I want to pivot. And I know you understand digital work behind the camera. How can we take something and repurpose it and reimagine it? And that's how our next collaboration transpired. If you have anything you want to share about that.
Well, I mean, one thing you might not know, actually, Autumn, is I grew up as a child in the ballet studio with my mom, who was a teacher. And so, and then when I was in Missoula and was younger, somehow I had some friends convince me that I should join their dance performance group. So I had a little bit of experience there. And so a lot of those groups I had been in before, really collaborative. And so when I had the opportunity to think, how can we create, translate live performance in dance into sort of a video format that can be viewed, during COVID, and just finding new ways to collaborate. And I love when I can get out of my little painting studio and try and think about how to make my work fit into a performative piece. And for some of you maybe who know my work more, some of my work is actually quite physically performative when I'm working with glacial ice. And so it seemed to just make sense that we would try and do something more. And that's what led to Shapeless, which is in this current exhibition, Picturing 2020. Do we want to stream Shapeless now, Chelsea, or do you have anything else you would like to say at this point?
No, we can share it. I'll just add that when we picked this date, I swear that we were not thinking of that 1 year anniversary. And so I find that really quite powerful and significant. And it's just a powerful reminder of where we are a year later. And so much has changed and so much hasn't.
So that was Shapeless. We had Autumn. You want to tell about the musician who collaborated with us on that as well?
Yes, absolutely. Robert Legendre, he is a pianist at the School of Dance, and um, just a wonderful composer. And I just felt like his score matched the sort of simplicity, sort of just single sort of one track focus. And so I just wanted to give him acknowledgement for his beautiful contribution.
Yeah, it was wonderful to get to edit the video alongside his instrumentation, and try and make that work together. I remember you approaching me about this. I was getting ready to take off for the summer to go work on all the glacier artwork I make in Montana. And Autumn's like, I have an idea for a collaboration. And I was like, well, I'm about ready to leave in a few days. What are you thinking? And fortunately, I stayed a little longer, and we were able to get out and have a day of filming. We had multiple days of filming planned out at different sites. Like we went out the day before and did a bunch of recon at different sites. And then the next morning we went out early to get the good morning light and ended up shooting all of our footage in one spot, primarily because I kept making Autumn do everything over and over again. And by the end of it, we were both really tired. I'm like, hey, I think we got enough. We should probably just get out of here, which was probably a good idea because a couple days later, the Bighorn fire started. So through that process, the video really changed meaning from the beginning to the end.
It did. I think it was such a I think I had been in the house for 4 months, hadn't stretched my legs or done any type of form of exercise whatsoever. So it was cathartic in a lot of ways. And for me, being in the home became this remote place because dance is such a social art form and social interaction. So stepping out in the open felt like this extension of being in this remote environment. And I think we both wanted to sort of address the immediacy of this period of isolation. And so Jonathan was really great at directing the shots. It was a simple descent down, and then this sort of symbolic way of touching down to the earth and coming back up. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it really felt like what we were trying to do is talk about some kind of journey. And that was where we found this wash, and Autumn was able to come down the wash and then go back up, and we filmed that a few different times. And for me in my work, it's a lot about connecting with the landscape. And in that work, the geology of the senses, that is also snippets of it included here in Shapeless. One of the questions I was really asking in this age of the Anthropocene is that, if humans are considered geologic forces, at what point do we become geology ourselves? And for me, it's that post-human encounter of realizing that the land also has its own, agency, similar as humans do, and we're both all engaged in shaping the land. And I was trying to figure a way to communicate that in the few minutes we had for the video. And it was just so fun to get out there and just collaborate and shoot video with Autumn. And so and I think, as Autumn mentioned, we were in the middle of the pandemic when it happened, which is why we were outside shooting outdoors where it was safest. So we were already going through one crisis, if you will, and then just within a few days later, as you all probably remember, the Tucson sky started filling up with fire and smoke. And it's just such a poignant example of how we really live with and on this earth, and it's not so much us in control here.
Exactly. And it was interesting. I made a conscious choice to improvise. Really try not to plan anything in the moment, because I felt it would be the best way to sort of translate this lived experience of what we had been going through. And now in retrospect, I see it as movement, as this conjuring of loss, grief, feeling of reset, recalibration, and in a way, like a loss of not just the present, but this uncertainty into the future. And I bring it back, that you notice that the color comes back into the frame when the foot touches the ground. Just felt it was like an important moment, this sense of recoiling, rebound, that the body can soften into its environment and still be resilient. So yeah, it's great to revisit this piece as well. Thank you. Chelsea, do you have anything, or Jonathan, to add to that?
I was just going to say that set idea of resetting really came through in this just recent watching for me, just thinking about how we, are now coming out of the pandemic to some degree with increased vaccination and other things. And it just kind of like, wow, it feels like we're sort of re-emerging again. And it seemed like that video, kind of captured that in a sense too.
Yeah, the timing of rescreening and revisiting that piece just feels so significant to me. I mean, as you were mentioning, Autumn, like this, as you're watching it again, you can't help but watch it through this like 1 year lens, right? And yeah, I mean, I see such a sense of like fragility in that way that you're kind of interacting with the landscape, and so careful with your body and its way that it's kind of imprinting in the space. It's a really, really beautiful piece. A question that I have for you, Autumn, is as I was watching this again tonight, is had you ever danced or choreographed in a landscape like that, in a space that was so physical?
Not to my recent memory. No. And I mean, there's always the nitty gritty behind the scenes. I don't think I walked for like 4 days after that. But no, it was, it's always, it becomes such a more meaningful experience when you incorporate your immediate surroundings in your environment. So, and sort of dealing with the improvised and the spontaneous was a very special and welcome challenge that I think came out of this experience.
That's great. And I have a couple of questions for you, but I want to just remind everyone that the chat is there to drop any questions for either the artists or both of them. And we'll definitely have time for that, as well as those that might be joining us on Facebook. So I'm wondering, before these two projects, before Drift and Shapeless, what had been your experience with collaborations such as this? So it's a question for both of you. Like, what was your background and experience with kind of interdisciplinary choreography or art making?
Jonathan, you want to go?
Sure. Collaboration, it has been a foundation of my artwork, something I always continue to revisit. I remember starting doing collaboration when I was an undergrad, making collaborative paintings with other students, for fun on Saturday night. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I started collaborating with this theatrical performance artist. We created this group in Missoula, Montana called the Open Field Artists, and it was with actors and dancers, choreographers. I think I was the lone visual artist at the time, but my job was often to create the sets or the installations we were making, because I was really trying to, I wanted the dancers to be in installations, not so much on the stage so much. And so we were trying to do a lot of things like that. And then as far as interdisciplinary work goes, the a lot of the glacial research I do often, I collaborate, maybe not sort of collaborate, but I'm responding to science. And I did some work through the what is it, the Center for Creative Inquiry, which often is an interdisciplinary agency there at U of A. And I've always tried to think about opening up my work to a broader dialogue, and especially when it came to these glaciers in Montana that I was really concerned about, and trying to figure out, well, how do I understand these places so that I can communicate it through my art more clearly. And so, when Autumn approached me, it was just like a no-brainer. Like, yeah, let's collaborate. We'll figure it out.
Great. Yeah, my history prior to these collaborations, in terms of collaborative efforts, had been well, dance is very much a collaborative effort. Even just being in the studio, the interpersonal interactions, to the entire whatever the production is definitely a collaboration. But my experience had been primarily with composers. I've worked for many years with a lot of extraordinary musicians, and really developed a passion for having that relationship of original music and choreography on stage. And in turn, through the years, I've tried to direct my art to and sharing dance, not just choreography, but also teaching and educating, as a way of service, giving to different communities, visiting different communities, bringing dance to places where you might not normally have it. So that's been something that I've really been trying to pour myself into, especially trying to utilize my time over the past year in a helpful way.
Yeah, I'm so glad you touched upon the fact that dance itself is collaborative, right? Which you illustrate, when you're talking about the composers that you're and the musicians that you're collaborating with, but it's collaborative in the fact that you've got dancers that you've got to work with as well, right? And I just think that the work between you and Jonathan is such a great example within the arts and on our campus and in our and in the wider arts world of this collaborative work that can happen outside of our individual studios. The fine arts can unfortunately sometimes get pretty siloed, but there's some great examples out there of that interdisciplinary work, and your pieces are some great examples.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And another question that I have for you is you touched upon this a little bit when you're talking about how the Shapeless piece obviously had to change so much from what you were originally planning on. And then you literally had to get on a plane and come back, and you had to find a new space for how you were going to do it. And the whole format and their choreography obviously changed quite a bit. But I'm wondering if each of you can maybe talk a little bit more about how the pandemic has, how it impacted and maybe how it changed how you're creating and like what you're responding to, or maybe even your creative practice over the last year.
Go ahead, Autumn.
Oh, sure. Okay. The less is more approach, literally, and asking that question, if this is going to be our reality for a prolonged period of time, what can we do differently, maybe better, maybe something something innovative that we had not, the power and the beauty of restriction. What is there to discover when you have less? And that's actually where the title Shapeless. I have a little series going on, my Less is More series, and this was the start. So I think it was just answering those questions of what can we do. Yeah. Jonathan?
Yeah, that's I just the quote at the beginning of the film too, we the Shapeless, we didn't really speak about, but it was from this old painting instruction book from, I believe China, I believe. It was a technique of how to do like Chinese landscape painting. And I love the way it, the quote was saying, kind of in a sense, like you've really got to become the rock to paint the rocks. And for me, I do a lot of I do what I call a lot of collaboration with glaciers, which are outside. I take cyanotypes to them and make images, abstract images with the ice. And so, fortunately, because a lot of my subject is outside and alone, I was able to continue with some of that work throughout the pandemic, fortunately. However, that was summertime, and now glaciers are covered in lots of snow. So I've been back down here in Tucson teaching, and it's been a lot more of like, I love what Autumn says there about less is more, and just settling in, getting quiet, which is something I do out with those glaciers too. So in some ways, it wasn't, my art form isn't as dependent on the live performance or the collaboration as say as a dancer would be. So for me, I've been getting back to like the basics. I've been drawing a lot at home now, and just using it as an opportunity to hone skills, and then also explore some new things like this video with Autumn. I mean, that was most of those videos I make are just these long time-based experiences condensed down, no editing. And this was an entirely different type of experience, trying to, edit a video and respond to Autumn and the music in a more of a narrative fashion, rather than just a sort of material process fashion, which is more what I'm akin to. So this is it's an opportunity to learn new things too, and try to become a better teacher too for my students, and learning how to communicate art online in new ways is really helped me think about just how to communicate about art in general, when we're sort of focused in this new format. So
Yeah, that's so important. And just a reminder of like, the other identity that you each have is not just as an artist, but as an educator too. Yeah, and while you were speaking, Jonathan, I was just thinking of like this practice that you already had of just being in a space and capturing that time. So you have to be there that whole time that you're capturing it. This like mindfulness practice is this last year, you're just being validated in what you were already doing to some extent, right?
yeah, it's you always need more practice, so.
Yes, mindfulness practice is not an end goal, right? An end game. Well, I saw one comment in the chat. Let me make sure I can actually see my screen there. Summer Hyatt shared that being in the pandemic, it's great to see collaboration and creativity brought to the intertwining of disciplines and the technology, new thoughts and ideas to bridge the distances. It's so innovative. And this can broaden your audiences who can view your work. That's really important.
Yeah, I've always been inspired by artists who have collaborated in this sort of format before. I'm sure many of our audience here is familiar with David Hockney, but David Hockney's done some incredible backgrounds for plays and operas. Robert Rauschenberg, an early influence of mine too, did a lot of collaboration, I believe, with Martha Graham and some other dance studios. And I had always been just really inspired about that way of thinking laterally amongst the disciplines and trying to make something new.
Great. Well, if there's any other comments and questions, we definitely have time for them. So please go ahead and leave them in the chat. Well, I'm just curious, I mean, kind of going off of that, what we were just talking about is like, what's been a source of inspiration for each of you this past year?
Watching what other people are doing, how they're persevering. it's interesting. I guess the biggest source of inspiration are my students. I have to really tip my hat to them. We have been in this very fortunate situation to have an in-person component over at the School on Dance, and we have our whole setup, live in person, the Zoom component for people at home. We pipe it into another studio online. We're juggling all these different modalities, and working within our squares and our confined spaces, and watching them grow, watching them persevere, watching them still flourish during this pandemic. I've turned to them many times over the course of this year, as a deep source of inspiration.
You know, it's been hard to feel inspired the last year, to be honest. I think that's one reason why I welcomed Autumn's collaboration so willingly. Was like, hey, that's something different, something to do, something to be inspired by. That's, not the same old thing. It's been a definitely a roller coaster of a year. In some sense, the quietness of the pandemic has been an inspiration to sort of review and reflect and think about, well, how am I going to move forward, with my art? And I can't imagine what it must be like to try and teach dance over Zoom, let alone trying to teach drawing over Zoom. So learning is always an inspiration for me, trying to figure out how to learn new skills and move forward. And then, of course, always just the land is an endless source of inspiration for me. And so trying to spend I guess during the pandemic, it was a good excuse to spend as much time outside as possible. So I kind of took that and spent just try to keep being outside in places with fresh air, and trying to explore some new places, and find ways to make connections with when we don't have the same ways of doing it before, where we could all be in an art gallery right now talking, and we'd all get to have cocktails afterwards. I certainly miss that, and looking forward to getting back to that.
Yeah, thank you for a very, very honest and real answer. Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Well, is there any kind of maybe possible future work that you are, each of you are planning on collaborating with each other on, or work that you have planned for the future individually that you like to share with us?
Well, I certainly have plenty of projects I'm working on. Like I said, I've been working on revisiting some drawings. In 2014, I started that glacier drawing project to draw every glacier in Montana. And so this has been a great, I've kind of went off into these painting video tangents, and it's been nice to kind of come back to that and focus on what the original source of inspiration was for me for all of this work I've been doing for the past, 6-7 years now. And so I have some things like that. I also did just buy like a 1969 vintage camper that I'm currently remodeling, and that I'm sure is going to be crazy. But then I think as far as Autumn and I mean, we have a very, very loose, up in the air idea right now about maybe doing something about all the jets flying over Tucson, just because I want to see her amazing dance students fling themselves into the air uncontrollably, like the way the jets sort of scream over our neighborhoods here on a daily basis. But we'll see if that goes anywhere.
Some serious trampolines to make that happen, but no,
Yeah,
actually,
maybe we could do it in one of those trampoline like gymnasium places where it's the whole floor is all trampoline. I'd love to see what your students would improvise. That's certainly, that's the one thing I love about dance, is the improvised dance is just, I love the way movers can respond so fluidly.
We have a chat that says, or using the shadows of planes. Yeah, using shadow and light, depth, range could be really, really compelling and interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jonathan and I are always kind of loosely. You had something going on with mall flowers as well. We had talked.
Oh, that's right. We were talking about, I was kind of developing a cyanotype, Anna Atkins' cyanotype project that gathered all the specimens of plants at the Tucson Mall to think about how, is the mall a habitat as well? Or, think about the way the mall is sort of becoming a contemporary ruin, if you will. Yet we still go to it and we engage it, and there's plants everywhere, and just trying to think about like urban botany in a way. And it seemed like that could be a place too where we could do some dance performance with the plants in the mall too, possibly.
Yeah. Especially over the past year, the concept of a mall seems very far away.
So that kind of whole idea kind of like,
Yeah.
went the way of the bucket once once COVID hit, because I haven't really been wanting to go to the mall, for example.
Exactly.
I wonder if there's like abandoned malls, abandoned spaces of these kind of urban decay might be an interesting space to use.
Well, it's fun. I'll mention. Oh, sorry, Jonathan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, that sounds exactly right.
Michelle and Dorsey Kaufman, who is another U of A grad in the School of Art, we went out after the pandemic as well and shot around the buildings on Broadway that I think have already been demolished. And it was another part of our pivot from Iceland, kind of reeling and dealing emotionally and creatively. We got out there on a couple of 108-degree days last summer and created some work about these, wrestling with these remote spaces. And I been kind of working more, trying to put myself behind the camera. Now is the best time to jump in and dive in and learn this. And I'm excited. The School of Dance has been able to continue with their performances. So we have some digital performances coming up. One of the pieces I'm thinking about or working on was a modern version of what it means for the masked ball in the Baroque period. Which was quite a social event, and trying to look at the concept of a mask with the historical context transposed to our current situation. So it's given us the situation has given some fodder for some different types of creativity.
I love it. It looks like the audience really responds to that idea as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Definitely a concept we can all relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Are there, speaking of upcoming performances in dance, are there any dates that folks should know about?
Yes, next weekend. That was I'm just going to make sure I'm not telling you the wrong day, but the 18th to 19th. We are launching our Inside the Box, Outside the Box digital series. You can go on our website and sign up, and it'll be up for the weekend. And then we'll also have another digital showcase at the end of April.
That's fantastic. So folks can go to the University of Arizona School of Dance website and can access the videos there for the weekend.
Yeah, you can join for it'll be like an open engagement for an extended weekend.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That's great.
Yeah,
Perfect timing to hopefully get some more people to experience all the hard work that you've been doing and the students at the university have been putting together too, in difficult circumstances. Mm-hmm. Well, we just have just like maybe one more minute left, unless anyone wants to drop a really quick question in there. I just have one last question. Speaking of students who are working through and enduring really trying times is a phrase that I've used way too many times in the last year, but it's pretty accurate. Do you have any advice for artists, student artists that are trying to navigate in this what seems to be a new reality?
Jonathan?
Well, no, I'm not sure I do, actually. I'm still thinking I need some advice, I think. Obviously, like, yeah, I think some of the things we described is like that we've sort of been demonstrating, I think would probably be in my advice. Like Autumn's like learning how to, get behind the camera, like take a risk, take a chance, do something that's different, figure out how you can, maybe move laterally, to find new ways of working and thinking in this, post-COVID environment. Hopefully some normalcy will, return to us in the, some near future where we can have art exhibitions again that aren't just online. And those are the things I think I'm really looking forward to and looking forward to reemerging into after this year of sort of reflection.
That's great. I've choked up a few times in front of my students, and I've told them, especially when we finished filming a piece that we've been working on, and I said, you guys, you're in the history books. Like you have made this happen. This is something that people will look back on in amazement of what you were able to accomplish and then you're going to carry the torch. And nothing in life is linear, and they're learning how to deal with the curves and the uncertainty. And I think I said before, they've made me cry a few times because it's just really humbling and really empowering to witness.
Thank you both for really, really honest answers again. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you saying that, Jonathan, that like sometimes we need advice, those of us that seem like experts, and that's okay to admit that. In fact, it's a teachable moment, and that's in that sense of being vulnerable, like you are with your students. So I really appreciate you being honest about that. Well, some lovely comments for you both in the chat. Definitely check those out. It was a fantastic conversation. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for sharing more about your collaboration and your work and how you're managing during this time, which is a 1-year anniversary for us. Definitely here at the U of A. It was just a couple of days from now, a year ago, that we transitioned, and thought it was just going to be for a couple of weeks, and we're at a year now. So really, really, I guess, poignant time to sit back and reflect on that. So thank you both, Jonathan, Autumn. Thank you for being here.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Chelsea. And being part of Picturing 2020 was an honor as well. It was an honor learning and navigating through the gallery, and just an honor to be included.
Thank you. Fantastic. And yeah, as a reminder, if you have not checked out the exhibition, Shapeless is in that exhibition. So if you want to revisit it, it is there in the galleries, Picturing 2020. Just go to our website. The link is also in the chat here. And check out their work again and see some of the other incredible artists that are in the exhibition. And thank you all for being here with us tonight. I'm going to leave a link in the chat, which is actually a link to a survey for our events. It's really helpful for us to know like who's coming and if our events are meaningful to our community. And so we always really appreciate folks taking just a couple minutes to go to that survey and leave some comments for us. So yeah, with that, I just want to say thank you both again for being here. Thank you everyone for being here. And I'll just kind of follow maybe a little bit what Autumn was saying with students is it's been a year. So check on yourself and check on friends and family. It's probably a good time to do that. And yeah, thank you all. Be well and stay healthy.
Thank you. See you. See everybody.
Take care, everybody.